Alrighty then, welcome to this webinar on keeping pace with change in GRC. This is an update for boards, CISOs and business leaders. We'll explore the topics of cyber regulatory compliance, supply chain risk management and leveraging AI to evolve GRC practices. In addition to the pertinent discussion we'll have amongst my panelists, we might even jump into the 6Clicks platform and share a few relevant demonstrations that go hand in hand with these topics. Before we do any of that, let's introduce ourselves. Hi, I'm Andrew Robinson, one of the co-founders and CISO at 6Clicks. And it looks like we've got a lot of the attendees here already. So let's bring on our esteemed guests. Firstly, we have Benjii Creevey, founder and managing director at 3 Lights. With one light for every decade of his experience, Benjii has held strategic management and executive positions for large ASX top 100 multinationals, as well as Fortune 500 listed companies. He also provides regular strategic direction to government departments and agencies. In establishing 3 Lights, Benjii specialises in starting with GRC to drive security program improvements that have a material impact on reducing risk exposure. Starting with GRC, that's a man after my own heart. And our second guest, Tom Schultz, Senior GRC Advisor at 3 Lights. With a lengthy career in the FBI across USA and international borders, he specialises in complex global risk and compliance operations. No doubt, Tom. Tom brings a depth of real-world thinking and outcomes approach to extremely challenging and complex environments, including national security, threat intelligence programs, and multi-jurisdictional operations. The list goes on. It's quite an impressive list. In addition to his extensive experience and GRC credentials, he's also a licensed US attorney. Is that right, Tom? Thanks for joining us. Do you both want to share a quick hello? Come off mute and say hello, and then I'll throw to you a little bit later again.
Thanks, Andrew. Good morning, everyone. Really pleasure to be here today.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Appreciate it. Yes, attorney, please don't hold that against me.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me here today.
Every bit of insight counts, I think, Tom. Thanks for your introductions, and it does seem that you're not the slightest bit worried about turning your microphones and cameras on, and the fact that those voice or video samples might be fed into an AI-powered impersonation attack these days, but you must be using some strong MFA on all of your online services, which is good. So getting to the theme, organisations, be they businesses or government departments and agencies, today they face a whirlwind of challenges, from rapidly evolving cyber regulations to new threats and global supply chain vulnerabilities to the ethical dilemmas posed by artificial intelligence. It's a lot to grapple with. So the question at the heart of our session today is, how do we as boards, CISOs and business leaders not just keep pace, but maybe even stay ahead in this dynamic landscape? Dare I say it, but traditional methods of GRC may no longer suffice. We're tasked with ensuring our organisations operate within legal and ethical boundaries, effectively manage all of these risks, and at the same time be ready to seize opportunities for growth. So we're going to start with a poll, and the poll is on that question: how do we as boards, CISOs and business leaders not just keep pace, but maybe even stay ahead in this dynamic landscape? So let me find the poll, launch the poll, and hopefully I've hit the right button. That should be coming up in your Zoom application now. And when we've got a bunch of results in, I will read them out. So the answers to the polls are just coming in now, which is great. Just confirming there should also be a chat box or a Q&A box where you can type in questions. So whilst we're asking you a question with this poll, and you've got some set answers there, and I can see the results coming in. Interesting. You could also ask us questions through that Q&A chat panel. And we'll do our best to be guided by the poll response as well as your questions throughout the session. I'll try to pick them up. Benjii and Tom will try to pick them up. Elaine might throw some at us as well, who's on the call coordinating. Otherwise, if we don't get to them during the live session for the first 45 minutes, we'll also try to get to them during the Q&A session towards the end, or might have to take a few offline. Encourage as many questions as possible. So just a few more poll responses to come in. If you get an answer in there, you're going to influence what you're going to see today. So it's in your interest to do that.
Andrew, I'm not sure about this. Hosts and panelists can't vote. That seems like you're enforcing some blocking already.
Right, yeah. You've got some strong thoughts, I know, Benjii, and you'll have your opportunity to share them, won't you? All right, so let's have a look. We've probably got the vast majority of attendees have casted a response to the poll. So let me have a look. So the question was, how do we as boards, CISOs and business leaders not just keep pace, but maybe even stay ahead in this dynamic landscape? The most popular response, believe it or not, was update GRC practices to align with business objectives and new technology. I think the rest of that answer was. What the one with the least amount of interest was analyze and model threats to information and IT assets. I thought that might garner at least one or two participant votes, but not so much. Probably in equal second and third place is stay up to date on legislative change and adopt international standards. Adopting international standards could be a good way to demonstrate compliance to legislative and regulatory requirements. So they do kind of go hand in hand, and that compliance view is surprisingly, quite a major focus, which is probably no big surprise from a board and CISO's point of view, as some of the changes are having a bit more teeth and impact on boards and CISOs, and no doubt Tom and Benjii will talk about that. So I'm going to end the poll now, but interesting results there, mostly focused on updating GRC practices, hinting potentially at when I said traditional methods may no longer suffice earlier. Turns out to be true based on the poll feedback we're getting. So let me end that and move swiftly on to explain that with the help of my special guests, Benjii and Tom, thanks for joining. We'll zoom in on three critical areas. The first one is cyber regulatory compliance, very relevant, and we're going to tackle the complexity of staying ahead with global cybersecurity laws and standards, understand the consequences of non-compliance, and explore successful strategies. Next, we're going to dive into supply chain risk management. Here, the aim is to build resilience against a backdrop of geopolitical tensions, cyber threats, the need for ethical and sustainable practices, and look at strategies for mitigating these risks, which will be paramount to our discussion. And lastly, we're going to explore potentially that last poll on modernising GRC practices. We're going to explore how to leverage AI to revolutionise our GRC practices. I'll grab that one. From transforming assessments to ensuring compliance, AI presents both opportunities as well as ethical considerations. I'll share some real-world examples as I dive into the 6Clicks platform, and I might get a chance as well and encourage some questions around how we maintain our own balance of innovation and responsibility. So our journey through the evolving landscape of GRC is more than about survival. It's about thriving, and I think Benjii and Tom are going to bring that to the forefront. By embracing governance as well as innovation and a culture of resilience, we can turn GRC challenges into opportunities for growth and competitive advantage. Tom, I'm going to throw it over to you. You have a tremendous background and international view on security. What are you seeing right now that organizations should be taking into consideration? And if I could add more to that, are these things that you're seeing globally applicable? Are they applicable just to certain geographies, industries, or sizes of organization? I'll leave it to you to unfold the environment as you see it.
Excellent. Thanks, Andrew. Appreciate it. Yeah, well, definitely. I mean, with cyber connectivity brings, global opportunities to our front door. However, this connectivity exposes all communities, all industries, all companies, large and small, to the same set of global risks. I see our cybersecurity landscape in three groups right now. First, we continue to focus on and prioritize securing our workforce, supply chains, and personal data. Next, our emerging focus is both the sword and the shield, that is generative AI. Finally, globally, governments are, as you alluded to, increasingly enacting new cybersecurity regulatory requirements, taking enforcement actions, and imposing serious penalties. As to our threat environment, today's dangers look very similar to past years. However, the sophistication of the threats has grown immensely. State actors and opportunistic criminals apply high-quality AI-generated text, voice, video, and code content to further their criminal efforts. Russian hacks penetrated and established a persistent presence in Microsoft, potentially increasing the quality and quantity of zero-day exploits ahead. That said, open source software itself is increasingly subject to exploitation. It's recently been reported that half of the 30,000 open source repositories examined were between 5 and 8.5 years old, and 10% were more than 10 years old. We're seeing sophisticated supply chain attacks become more commonplace. More from Benjii soon on that. On the risk mitigation front, I think the most exciting technological development is leveraging the same AI technology to assist boards in creating and maturing risk-driven cybersecurity operations. Transitioning to company and director liability. In Australia, board members for organizations with an annual turnover of $3 million or more are now personally responsible for the organization maintaining compliance with and updated cybersecurity legislation. Future legislation may impose the same liability on all directors without regard to annual turnover. The notifiable data breaches scheme provides penalties of $444,000 for individuals, $2.2 million for companies, and penalties exceeding $50 million for serious and repeated violations. If that's not enough to catch the attention of boards, under the Corporation Act, directors and officers who fail to discharge their duties with a degree of care and diligence may be ordered to pay additional penalties. And directors and officers who breach statutory and general law duties may incur other penalties, including compensation to the company, civil penalties of $1 million, disqualification from managing companies, and/or imprisonment or fines for recklessness or intentional dishonesty. Touching on the commercial risk aspect, I think recent events have given us fine examples. Customers reportedly canceled 65,000 plans after the 2022 Optus data leak, and 56% of its customers considered changing telcos as a direct result of the attack. The 2023 network outage resulted in Optus shares dropping by about 4.5% by the close of business. In the US, the Harvard Business Review stated publicly traded companies suffered an average decline of 7.5% in their stock market values after a data breach event. This impact can reverberate through the entire supply chain, multiplying losses up to 26 times across the company's entire business ecosystem. There's no way to cover such a topic without talking about cyber insurance as well. The cyber insurance marketplace is under strain, with recent discussions focused on whether the current system is even sustainable. To reduce policy risks, cyber insurance underwriters are increasingly want to know, are you taking the steps to understand and act on risks? Do you have a robust management strategy, multi-factor authentication, network segmentation, and endpoint protection? BitSight takes a broader view of risk. They basically underwrite 50% of the policies out there. not only do they want to examine your network risk, but they are looking across your entire integrated supply chain as well in determining policy risks. Important takeaways from this also include that organizations won't be covered by known vulnerabilities. No surprise there. However, that may include vulnerabilities the company should have known about. Therefore, it's essential to monitor your systems, address vulnerabilities, as doing so is essential to, among other purposes, preserving that very insurance coverage. As to regulatory changes, within Australia, we're seeing critical infrastructure is a real hot topic, of course. In recent years, the SOC Act application has expanded from 4 to 11 sectors. In September, the number of critical infrastructure assets declared to be of national significance nearly doubled. And it is forecasted the Act will be amended and increase the cyber obligations of managed service providers and cyber reporting requirements of telecom companies. We can see from the before mentioned recent telecom failures that we are one critical infrastructure failure away from addition of other asset classes to the list of those subject to the critical infrastructure risk management plan requirements. Next, in the area of general business regulation, it's now evident that the ASIC Cyber Resilience Good Practice Statement and related standards with those boards and C-suites are alike or on notice as to how they will be judged in a court, in the marketplace, and when engaging vendors and insurance providers alike. Privacy regulation globally continues to evolve. As just one example, the Privacy Act here in Australia was subject to a 2023 review. This has led to legislation which will impose new requirements as early as 2025, and more are likely to follow in the years to follow, excuse me. As a result, Australia will soon see a more GDPR-like privacy model. Your organization's legal teams really need to be a close partner to ensure your organization stays across the myriad of new national, state, territory level privacy laws throughout your operational area. However, it's also really important to remember that today's business operations, privacy and data security obligations often arise from contracts instead of regulations. And these obligations may be essential to maintaining your business relationships and to minimize civil liability. I think finally, what's really evident is that the boards and companies alike are facing a real challenge of lack of internal risk visibility. Boards and C-suites are responsible for knowing and monitoring the risk landscape. It's essential for the directors to maintain vertical visibility within the organization to fully understand the threat picture, difficult to obtain from a quarterly risk briefing alone. Likewise, business unit risk managers must not only understand their operations, their units' operations, but operations of other organizational units. The only way to develop an accurate understanding of their units' risk is by having lateral visibility across the organization. And I think my final point is just to note that their legal obligations of directors, they must actively engage in the following four. One would be establishing the organization's risk standards. Two, not just monitoring risk dashboard, but actively engaging in establishing what is to be measured and what is to be reported. Three, promoting an effective risk management program. And finally, drive the message that collaboration between business units is essential to success, and partners, I would pose. Enterprise success and individual success to be included.
Tom, that's a lot to take in and enough to grab anyone's attention. I'm just grateful that you used the last few moments of that section to give us some ideas on the path forward as well, because that is a lot of responsibility and a lot to deal with. Benjii, have you got anything to add from a cybersecurity regulation and legislation and responsibility perspective?
Yeah, Andrew, just one point, if I can make an observation. I think in addition to that, organisations need to be aware of and ultimately form some form of position around any risks and potential impacts, if any, to their business from foreign interference, reconnaissance and espionage. This is something we've seen over recent weeks. It's sometimes overlooked at a board level, and it's not always on their radar, but this is now becoming an increasing threat, and it's an additional risk to organisations that needs to be considered, particularly in Australia, but also abroad. And this is nowhere more prevalent than what Tom mentioned in critical infrastructure sector right now.
Sure. Something to be aware of. Staying with you, Benjii, do you want to dive into the supply chain and vendor risk side of the equation? I'm wondering, did it all begin with SolarWinds? Or was that just a wake-up call on a sort of a long history of supply chain and vendor risk management struggles? And is there an underlying problem that needs to be addressed, and how might we go about that?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. That's a good question. I guess there might have been others before that, but SolarWinds for me certainly I think was the supply chain event that really set the world up bolt upright and made us really take a serious inward look around an area that we previously hadn't really considered in terms of a risk perspective. Well, certainly in an IT risk, maybe not so much telcos. I think that risk in supply chain have been around for a while, but yeah, SolarWinds, it's an interesting one, and I was running that globally in the day, so it was quite an eye opener. It's a good segue into my topic today, I guess, really around supply chain and supply chain management and the challenges that's facing leaders today. So to set this off, supply chains really, they're paramount to how our organisations run today. The sheer level of interconnectedness now and the reliance that business has on its operations is creating all these new challenges for boards and business leaders. I think it's fair to say that leaders today are much more acutely aware of risks in cyber than, let's say, 5 years ago. But what's becoming really top of mind now is trying to quantify the risks associated with the supply side. The very nature of the supply chains with digitization, you've got the advent of cloud. This all creates fresh challenges that need to be considered and, as Tom's pointed to, managed accordingly. To your earlier question in terms of underlying problems, sure, I'd like to touch on a few aspects here and present some tips and some approaches on addressing each of these. Firstly, acknowledging the increasing risk and pressure on the supply chain itself from things like cyber, geopolitical tensions, trade, and of course the increasing regulations that just seems to be on our screens every day. The material risk, and this is a fundamental importance that we need to understand. It's real risk. It's absolute commercial material risk to the business of disruption to the business operations is creating these headaches on multiple fronts. And what we see certainly in the market and with a number of our customers, it creates this fog, I guess, if you will, around, for CISOs and boards on how to navigate through. So from our experience and what we've found in the market is that the supply chains are now increasingly an entry point for threat actors in an effort to exploit, potentially more lucrative target that's connected in that supply chain. So that's something to really be aware of. And I'll talk about that coming up a little bit more about cloud consciousness threat actors. In Australia, we are seeing that play out, obviously, in various cyber-related events over recent years. And it's not just cyber. We touched on geopolitical, trade, foreign policy, even foreign interference, all impacting the board and the business operations for today's leaders. So this is a very complex area to address today, and hence part of the topics today on how we might be able to go about that. Why that's happening, I believe, in part, not fully, of course, is a result of a lack of genuine commitment to, or at least a solid understanding of what good governance and risk management actually looks like in a strong GRC program. Sure, acknowledge that people are doing this day to day, and that might be at periodic moments through the year, but not in the sense of an ongoing, strong, continuous GRC program. And the other factor here is not fully calculating the total commercial risk impact from a potential supply side event. So I won't go too much into it today, but the topic of CRQ, or commercial risk quantification, is now gaining a lot of traction in the industry to distill that down into some form of metric that actually boards and executives can understand. Just shifting, so obviously the increase in the sophistication of threat actors is contributing to the increase in the supply side attacks. We've seen that again here in Australia and globally as well. The underlying motivations are varied, of course, ranging from monetary to geopolitical to ideological, being among the leading indicators for the threat actor motivations. But unpacking this a little further, I see a few other underlying problems that need discussion here. And the first one is really what I call around holistic visibility into the criticality of the business supply side. We need true visibility across the entire supply ecosystem. And this is not about, this is about rather understanding the risk profile and the criticality of the suppliers that are imperative to the operation of your business and continuity. This is now regulatory. We've seen that in so many sectors, particularly in critical infrastructure. We will look at some use case examples coming up in the demonstration that show how this can be streamlined and automated to gain that visibility and the transparency that's so sorely needed to make those timely decisions at a board level. The next problem that we're seeing is this art of balancing between cost effectiveness of the risk mitigation itself on one hand, while trying to stay aligned with the organizational values and ethics on the other. This fundamentally requires collaborative leadership and continuous innovation. Business leaders need to first understand the challenges and the risks in order to formulate the position, and then embrace the opportunities to build stronger, more sustainable supply chains for the future. And this is where we see the emergence of AI and the consolidation of the entire GRC ecosystem as a turning point for businesses. And it's an opportunity to gain an advantage back in order to make those effective decisions and how to minimize true material risk and build those sustainable, resilient programs for the future. So I've talked about visibility and the art of balancing risk mitigation strategies. I would like to just quickly touch on cloud security and the risks associated here. So much of our suppliers now and the whole supply chain dependencies now critically rely on cloud technologies. We all know this, but don't underestimate the threat actors here. The threat actors are using the same tools and the latest technology like AI, but without all the legal boundaries that businesses face. So it's an unfair advantage. As much as, I want to leave some really important points here, some statistics. So as much as 45 to 60% of breaches are now cloud-based. So 45 to 60%, depending on which source you read. Nearly 75% of companies are defaulting to cloud for their day-to-day operations, 75%. And cloud uptake itself is growing 20+% year on year. So threat intelligence data points to around 95% increase from the previous year in cloud exploitation. And they're seeing a 3 times increase in cloud consciousness threat actors. This means the threat actors are moving to the cloud, new tech TTPs and threat vectors to deliberately exploit business and disrupt supply chains. So in my view, it's simple math. what got us here today will not get us to where we need to be tomorrow. And I'll quote from that I've never forgotten from Steve Nola, who I worked with many years ago. So what does that mean? It means that the GRC, the legacy tools and spreadsheets and the practices that got us here will not be the ones that take us to where we need to be tomorrow. So we must look to new innovative approaches like 6 Clicks with its AI and streamlining business processes across the GRC ecology to advance the resilience and posture of the organisation. And that invariably creates a call to action for a fresh perspective on supply chain risk management, which will be demonstrated shortly by Andrew. Organisations must place an emphasis on the importance of proactive risk management, strategic and collaborative planning alongside industry. So with collaboratively with the suppliers, and ethical leadership in addressing these challenges head on. So our tip here, be proactive and be inclusive. Work with the suppliers, the vendors and the third parties, and take a proactive approach. We see it's far more favourably received than taking a hardline enforcement approach where everything's a nail. Where possible, look to incorporate good GRC practices into your procurement process early in the selection, and then continue to monitor and review like you would with any other continual service initiative. And we always see CSI initiatives fundamental at the heart of good GRC practices. This will fundamentally reduce risks and potential issues and headaches downstream. So in summing up, we have these multifaceted challenges facing business leaders today in managing supply chain risks. So I call this the nexus of forces. So what does that look like? So if you imagine 2 circles, one circle, you have all these inward pressure points on business: regulatory, compliance, cyber, legal and ethical, supply chain, resourcing, attracting and retaining talent. So all these inward pressures. The other circle is all the outward pressures from the business: growth, operations, remaining competitive, upholding a positive corporate brand, and conducting ethically in the community and socially with global. So summing up, business leaders need and seek to improve the supply chain visibility, diversify suppliers where possible, and continue to fortify cybersecurity on all fronts. And we need to set positive goals to integrate ethical and sustainable practices across the business, top down and bottom up. To help achieve these outcomes, so at 3 Lights, we leverage the power of 6 Clicks. We've been using that for over 3 years, but we use that both in our day-to-day operations, but also alongside our clients. So thank you, Andrew. That's me, so I'll hand that back over to you.
No worries. Thanks, Benjii. You took my blood pressure up for a while, but it's starting to come back down again. Tom, have you got anything to add regarding supply chain challenges? I know you mentioned it briefly in your talk about cyber regulatory compliance. Is anything to add before we move on to AI and GRC specifically?
Yeah, just expanding on what Benjii was touching on. I mean, we definitely need to engage our supply chain as partners. We need them to take the assessment and scanning process as seriously as we do. And in order to do that, it needs to be seen as a gain for not just us, but them as well. And how do we engage our partners as true partners, so that they recognize value from this assessment process. They recognize reduced risks as a result of the entire risk management process. How do we then, how do they increase their own visibility and ultimate security from this? I think that we need to approach any of these supply chain issues with that win-win partnership frame of mind.
Yep, choose partners wisely and work together closely. Thanks, Tom. I'm going to move pretty quickly through our third topic and onto the demonstration, maybe doing a little bit of mix of both, focusing the demonstration on the AI components that are going to help here with vendor risk management, cyber reg compliance, and other aspects of GRC. But before I do, just a few words on AI. to say that AI technology is not just reshaping the future, it's actively redefining every sector imaginable, not just GRC, but in, of course, healthcare and finance and marketing and every sector, of course. So, however, with great power and benefit comes great responsibility, especially in managing the risks that AI presents and adhering to emerging principles and standards designed to foster innovation whilst ensuring that ethical and secure use that's expected of us. At its core, AI involves machines or computer systems performing tasks that are typically or traditionally require human intelligence. And this involves problem solving, recognizing patterns, understanding language, and even learning from experience now. The potential is enormous, but so are the risks. And AI systems can perpetuate biases, provide output based on flawed data, and be vulnerable to misuse. So standards bodies like NIST and ISO have created standards for AI, work with the NIST AI Risk Management Framework and the new ISO 42001. These standards aim to ensure that AI technologies are developed and deployed in ways that are ethical, secure, and beneficial for all, and hopefully helping us meet those cyber regulatory compliance requirements. They cover everything from data privacy and security to the reliability and robustness of AI systems. So going much broader than the focus of cybersecurity. So let's now delve into the 6Clicks AI journey and how we can help to evolve GRC practices. We have a capability that we call Haley, which is a suite of AI-powered features revolutionizing GRC practices for GRC professionals. So first up, I'm going to talk about compliance and how we can use Haley AI for compliance mapping. So let me see if I can bring that up quickly and easily with all of my various windows. So hopefully, does that come up for you? Maybe a confirmation from Benjii or Thomas that you can see that?
I can see that.
Cool. So you should see the 6Clicks platform pop up, and the Haley for compliance mapping is used to automate the traditional painstaking process of mapping standards and regulations from one to another, which can be done manually, but can be done much faster if you're using the natural language processing capabilities of an AI engine. This can reduce the time you spend putting these mappings together, and the benefits that you get out of it is the ability to translate audit and assessment outcomes from something like ISO 27001 to the audit outcomes, or what that might look like through the lens of a NIST cybersecurity framework or another standard using those relationships. And I'll show you what that looks like in just a tick. But just to explain this a little bit further, 6Clicks is a GRC platform. It has all of the modules along the left-hand side. We've got a content library that has these standards like ISO and NIST and many more. And in this case, I'm looking at the newer ISO 27001-2022 Annexes A, which there's 93 controls, and I'm comparing it against the NIST Cybersecurity Framework version 2 that came out earlier this year. At the top half, I see a comparison between two provisions, which is the clause 5.1 from ISO 27001 and the GVPO 01 from the NIST Cybersecurity Framework 2.0. So it's drawing the most likely comparison or equivalent control or requirement based on that natural language processing. And here in the bottom half of the pane, you can see other potential linkages as well for this particular ISO control or others. If I jump down to something like threat intelligence, here it's linking that to identify an external threats from the NIST cybersecurity framework. And customers and advisors like those from 3Lights can help build out these mappings and accept and reject, or what we call link, match or unmatch these. So we believe in human in the loop supervision of AI. These suggestions make your life easier, but the human has the ability to overrule and curate the mappings as well. We just make the process a lot easier. One of the outcomes or benefits of doing that activity is the ability to take an audit. I've done an audit against the older 27001, 2013 in this particular environment. It's got a variation of results, mostly implemented, some other attributes of the result, and then I can pivot that and look at it through the lens of the NIST cybersecurity framework and get an idea where my gaps might be if there's not a lot of overlap between the two standards. So that's the first outcome with compliance mapping, but there's another aspect to compliance mapping as well, which is building a unified control set. So here I have an organizational policy or internal control set for IT operations security. It covers a whole range of different topics. One of those is backup. This control that I have for backup has been manually mapped to an ISO control for information backup, but then I've used Haley to map against the new version of the NIST cybersecurity framework just yesterday, actually, in preparing for this demo, and it sort of said, hey, you might want to link your internal control to this external requirement to do with backups, and you can go ahead and just link that or unlink it. And it'll help you build this one way of doing business that you can collect evidence for and then reuse that evidence against and demonstrate compliance against multiple different standards. One way of doing business that can be used to demonstrate compliance to multiple frameworks and standards. That can certainly simplify your compliance activities. Anything to add on that, Tom or Benjii, or I'll keep moving on?
Yeah, I might just add a very quick point from a practical perspective in terms of practitioners and what we're seeing. So what you've just seen from Andrew, why this is quite important as well. When we look at client operations and geographical sectors, quite often what we see is a blend of standards. So we see companies that are running a mismatch. So they might use, whilst they might comply to one standard, they will look to other frameworks. So maybe you comply to ISO in certification, but they want to draw in and draw down from NIST and other specialized standards. And it could be Australian-based or European. So in practice, we see that this is a really useful tool for comparing and blending the different standards and mapping those through.
Thanks, Benjii.
The addition of the ability to also have regulatory requirements mapped and also contractual requirements. I think it's just a huge benefit across the organization.
Yeah, we can load those in as custom compliance documents. Next, I'm going to talk about supply chain risk management. Just to say real quickly that that is a module that 6clicks supports. You can add one by one. You can import your suppliers and record all different kinds of information about them. We streamline onboarding with an onboarding form, which people can use to submit or apply for new vendors to be onboarded into the organization. And through this process, we can add some automation. So not AI just yet, but automations to say, okay, when we receive that application, we're going to send them an assessment. That assessment is going to be what I call establishing the scope and context, or T-shirt sizing the vendor or the system that is involved, and we can get an idea of its criticality to the organization. And from there, based on the results of that T-shirt sizing assessment, we can automate the process of sending them another assessment which says, hey, here's our small assessment for low risk, our medium for average risk, and our selection of controls for our high risk vendors, which might be more onerous. And then, so the first thing your GRC team is looking at is, a thorough control assessment that has been right-sized for the vendor or system that needs to be assessed. So that can really streamline the vendor onboarding process. And of course, the assessments can be carried out by the third party or supplier themselves, or it could be an internal process that your security or supplier team goes through based on public domain information. Or trust portals that various organizations now have, and including 6clicks customers. There's an AI component to how we help with the supply chain assessments, or in fact, any assessment. It's a relatively new capability we have called Ask Haley. And what it does is it uses the previous answers that have been provided within the team and within the access control context. will surface previous answers. So if the audit and assessment has been carried out internally, then here we can rely on previous answers that have been given to similar questions in different potential audits or standards, and we can provide that as a suggestion and load that in as the answer to a question that you've received. And this can also benefit your suppliers as well as your own audits. So we're doing more with that Ask Hayley capability as well. And the last example I'm going to have is, it actually comes from our development environment, and is something that will be released over the next couple of weeks. And it's what we're calling Hayley Assist, or we're calling all of these features now Hayley, and Hayley now has the ability for you to interact with it through a chatbot style interface and ask questions, again within the context of your access controls, and it draws on the information within the team as well as our knowledge base to help you answer questions. So I can ask it questions around my published assessments. It's just another way to interact with the GRC data that can benefit GRC professionals, but also those boards or CISOs that might not know where to go, but if they have access to Hayley to interact with on a chat basis, they can ask the questions that they have in plain English and get the answers that they're looking for. So we see that as really a next generation capability for GRC platforms that can point you in the direction and get the answers and insights that you're looking for quickly, be it come from the risk module, the control module, or wherever else. We also see this expanding so that we might make this chatbot available so that it could be interacted with outside of the 6Clicks platform in tools that are more regularly used by CISOs and board members. Or it might be via our trust portal, so that if a customer is looking at a subset of our GRC information relevant to their due diligence, they can interact with the data in a chat style natural language engagement that answers the specific questions that they've got, rather than just presents, large assessments and reports. Makes everything easier. So that's our last capability, the chat interface, Hayley Assist, the ability to ask questions in natural language across all of your GRC data. What do you think of that, Benjii and Tom? Are you going to find that useful? You might be posing the questions and passing the information on to your customers, but Hayley should be able to help you answer the questions.
Yeah, looking forward to that release of Hayley Assist. The other stuff, the other features that you showed are already in there, so we use those ones daily. But yeah, really looking forward. It's quite exciting, and I think it'll add a lot of value to businesses and CISOs and leaders running GRC programs.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I totally agree. Definitely.
Yeah, and we have a long roadmap of innovative capabilities to bring to the GRC table to make the lives of our advisor partners and our end customers easier when it comes to managing all of the complexity of cyber regulatory compliance and risk management, and making sure that controls are effective. So watch this space and follow us if you're not already a customer. Feel free to reach out to us or Three Lights. I'm going to move now, with 10 minutes to go, into our Q&A session. So if you've thought of a question but not yet put it in, please feel free to put it in now. I wish I had some music for the poll and for now, but I'll just stay silent just for a moment, and I'll have a look for any existing questions and answers.
Andrew, just while there might be some questions coming in, just one thing again that we're also seeing around AI. We've seen some companies taking a pretty hardline approach to it. So by way of sort of application blocking and sort of enforcing, taking a position that says, no, we're not embracing AI because of the sword and shield. Yes, it can pose a lot of problems around data protection and privacy. We sort of take a little different approach there around ethical governance, and we talked a bit about that. So we see really it's no different than the cybersecurity awareness training and initiatives that we've seen over a number of years. So training and education forms a really, really pivotal part here for for AI. So it's not a block and enforce approach. You can easily the tools are out there today to give business leaders the insights of who's using AI and which particular applications. But I think we need to encourage the use of it in an ethical and sustainable approach, because the benefits are there. We've seen that and talked about it today. So so just a little bit of a guide for business leaders out there today. So don't throw it out and dismiss it as, you know, this is not for us. It's too dangerous in terms of risks of data leaking out and things like that. So I think you can have your cake and eat it too. And certainly that's what we're advocating here is, you know, create a secure and educated workforce, but, you know, that allows the benefits of AI to really drive the business benefits. Thanks.
I agree, Benjii. There's really the only way to learn is through experimenting and playing with it. And if you play with it early and experiment early, then you can learn and evolve your practices to keep pace with the evolution of the technology. If you try to start too late, you're only forever playing catch up and might not have a keen insight into the risks. Thomas, I saw you come off mute.
Yeah, so I think particularly for governments, but also businesses in the area of business strategy and also intellectual property, we really need to know what inputting data into the AI tools is going to result in terms of compromise of value of that intellectual property. That being ingested, it becomes part of everybody's answers, and will that diminish the value of that data, of that intellectual property behind it?
Yep, good addition. So I'm going to start my way through the questions and we'll see how we go for time. The first question, thank you, it relates to ISO 42001. I did throw out a reference to it. And are we planning to build a security program and incorporate it into 6Clicks and maybe even the 6Clicks Academy for learning aspirants? And the answer to that is yes. ISO 42001 is a part of the ISO content that we license and make available through the content library. That's available today along with the Responsible AI Content Pack. That content pack includes a wealth of information, including both ISO 42001, the NIST AI Risk Management Framework, AI ML risk library, as well as an AI ML control set, as well as a business impact or system impact assessment, which is required as a part of ISO 42001. We don't have an academy course for it just yet, but there is a wealth of information that we've made publicly available. If you search through our website for responsible AI, there's an expert guide, as well as a downloadable resource that has a wealth of information on responsible AI and all of the information I've just mentioned in it. And as well, I'll be presenting at CyberCon in Canberra next week on this very topic, if you happen to be there. Tom, Benjii, anything to add on ISO 42001 or AI more generally?
No, nothing that you haven't already covered. Thanks, Andrew.
Cool. Another question here related to IEC 62433-2, it may be. So IEC content, sometimes in partnership with ISO, sometimes they go solo. So that IEC content is not included within our license agreement with ISO, but we have plenty of partners and customers that are working with that content specifically around critical infrastructure, most likely. So it is in use in the 6Clicks platform. And if you needed help getting it into the platform where you have your own valid license, then you can reach out to your account manager, our customer success team, or our support team, and we'll help you through that. So hopefully I've answered those questions live. There are a couple more questions, but what I might do is take them on notice. If there's no closing remarks from Benjii and Thomas, and give you a couple of minutes back in the day. Benjii, Thomas, do you want to say any final remarks or goodbye for the day?
I might just quickly jump in, other than a huge thank you to 6Clicks team for letting Tom and myself come along today. But just some references and reading. I just wanted to point out to industry, there's a wealth of information out there, whether it's through AICD and the recent papers that have been released specifically for boards and directors. ACSC obviously is always a good source. If you're in critical infrastructure, the Department of Homeland Affairs and CISC, they just released an organisational readiness health check tool as well. So that's just hot off the press as well. And even having a look at the Australian government, the 2023 to 2030 Australian cyber strategy, there's a lot of good references and reading out there where you can, extract some really good gems on to take into your program. And of course, 6 clicks and 3 lights. So thank you very much. I'll go on mute, but thank you again.
You're welcome, Benjii. Thomas?
Thanks for the opportunity to join the discussion here, and thanks to the attendees for joining us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks everyone for joining us today for this webinar on keeping pace with changes in GRC. Hopefully we've helped you keep pace to move forward confidently. If it wasn't already obvious, this webinar was brought to you by 6 Clicks, and thanks and appreciation goes to Benjii Creevey and Tom Schultz from 3 Lights for joining us today. Be sure to check out their websites. That's the number 3 lights, lights.com.au, and check out 6 Clicks, of course, the number 6, followed by clicks, CLICKS.com for the avoidance of any doubt. Have a nice day, and I hope to see you at the next webinar.